Channel Africa.
It is 12:19 Central African time, and we're coming to you live from Johannesburg in South Africa. We have a lot to say. We are on WhatsApp. Hey Africa, we're on WhatsApp. Want to stay connected to everything happening across the continent, from the stories shaping Africa to the latest updates, exclusive content, show highlights, and all the moments you don't want to miss. Channel Africa is now in your WhatsApp. No searching, no scrolling, just open WhatsApp, hit updates, find channels, and follow Channel Africa. Tap, follow, stay connected. Channel Africa, the African perspective.
Keep Africa in your hands. Connect to our website for all your news, sports, and cultural updates. channelafrica.co.za. When the story moves, we move. Africa Update with Lulu Gaboo. 12 to 1 p.m. Central African Time on Channel Africa.
As South Sudan prepares for its first ever national general elections on the 22nd of December in 2026, concerns are mounting over the country's political and security stability. Tensions persist amid an ongoing power struggle between President Salva Kiir and opposition leader Riek Machar, who remains under house arrest. At the cross-border arms smuggling continue to threaten the prospects of a peaceful democratic transition. Adding to the challenge, the National Elections Commission says it requires $250 million to conduct the polls, but faces a significant funding shortfall, having secured only a small fraction of the amount needed. Dr Oluwole Ojewale, ENACT Regional Organised Crime Observatory Coordinator for Central Africa at the East Institute for Security Studies, and now joins us on the line. Dr Ojewale, good afternoon, and thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Good morning from Dakar. Thank you so much for having me.
Now, Dr Ojewale, South Sudan preparing for its first ever national general elections in December 2026. How would you assess the current political and security environment ahead of this historic vote?
Thank you so much once again. The election is going to be the first election conducted since the country gained independence as the youngest republic on the continent. And there was a civil war that lasted between 2013 and 2018. If this election is holding, then it is holding in a context of fragility, in which the country is not really at war, but there has been low-level intensity conflict that has divided the country along ethnic line over the years. This is also layered with all sorts of security concerns of communal clashes, arms trafficking, and at the same time cattle rustling and all forms of violent crime. But this is also taking place in the context of one of the most consequential civil war that has been raging on the continent in Sudan for more than 2 years now. All these put together are influencing the state of peace in South Sudan, and that raise serious question about the possibility of holding a free and fair election in the context of all these.
Now, the country continues to experience tensions between President Salva Kiir and opposition leader Riek Machar. Riek Machar remains under house arrest. How much of a threat do these political divisions pose to a peaceful transition?
So the opposition are of the view that this election is being staged to just perpetuate the government in power. And the case of South Sudan is a case of brothers divided against one another. Basically, we have one single political party that has been fractured into governing party and opposition party. So you have what they call South Sudan People Liberation Movement, SPLM in government, SPLM Hi-Ho, and you also have this SPLM in opposition. And those opposition forces feels this election is just an exercise to impose legitimacy on the governing party, not necessarily an election that is consultative, that is a build-up, or that has consultation, wide consultation, as it something that is actually undergirding holding that election. And as long as the opposition leader is incarcerated, many people believe in South Sudan. I know this is not peculiar to South Sudan. Even across Africa, observers are of the view that this is a one-way election that just want to confer legitimacy on the governing party. As long as the opposition do not have their say in the preparation to that election. And that is the reason why they have been issuing of threats that if the election goes ahead, then there's going to be another crisis in the country. So the opposition is not on the same page because they think the election is not being prepared for in their own terms. They are not consulted and their voices are not carrying any weight as far as that election is concerned. And that is what has divided the country. That raised question about the possibility of having a fair election in South Sudan now.
Now, what are the biggest security risks that could disrupt the elections? I mean, you've pinpointed arms smuggling as a major threat to South Sudan's December elections. How serious is the flow of illegal weapons into the country?
Illegal weapon is flowing into the country from neighboring countries, particularly those ones that are in conflict. I will talk about Eastern DRC that borders South Sudan in the south. I'll talk about Central African Republic that borders South Sudan to the east, and the big one, the Sudan Civil War. These are arteries through which illegal arms are flowing into the country. And I need to say this against the backdrop of a fact that Sudan is in perpetual arm embargo. Nevertheless, arms are getting into the country through illicit means, through state-sponsored corruption, through armed groups that are operating in these different countries that I've mentioned, and through the collaboration of armed groups, communal vigilantes that are operating in the country. These are outlets through which arms are getting into the country. And at the same time, there is also the concern about the initial low intensity conflict that I mentioned across the places. And this is also layered with the fact that governance in most cases in South Sudan is just within the peri-urban areas of Juba and selected major cities. The rural areas are completely ungoverned and they are rather governed by armed groups. So the implication is that if election is to hold in the context of what I just said now, the possibility of disenfranchising a greater majority of South Sudan who are living in the rural areas that have been taken over by armed groups is very, very high. And that is going to raise a legitimacy question on the outcome of that election, which could be disputed. And if it is disputed, it becomes a precursor for another cycle of crisis. And if I can begin to go in the direction of solution, I think the challenge now is that what happens in South Sudan must not be left to South Sudanese. There's a need for Pan-African solution, Pan-African interest, so that we do not have another conflagration of the Congo-Sudan dimension in our hands. And that is the reason why we're calling on African Union, we're calling on regional economic groups to take interest in the election in South Sudan. Not just talk about the financing for the election, but talking and addressing critical issues that can either aid or abet free and fair election in the countries, which already exist in building blocks.
Just you mentioned the finance part of the election and the fact that there is already an issue where 250 million US dollars is required, and they only have a small fraction of the amount that's needed. Is there enough time to build up that money to make up the 250 million that is required, or what needs to happen now? And as you say, this shouldn't be the main focus. Peace and stability should be a major focus, but this could also hinder the taking place of these elections.
Yes, money is important, but we can't throw money on hard problems. The fact that the ruling government want to hold the election, I'll give you an example. When I was in South Sudan in May this year, about 2 or 3 months ago, I was talking to people, and then we talk about this election. Uganda spent, I think, according to the record that I got on the ground, about $1 billion on their election. That is almost the amount of the budget of South Sudan. So South Sudan is claiming now, with that 250 million USD that you quoted, that they want to spend about a quarter of that money on election. How significant is holding that election in the context of all these factors that I've mentioned? And it is not about holding election. The opinions of most people in the country now is that elections should only hold when all these factors are considered, particularly the issues that has to do with agreements on peace in the country, which has been lingering and has been the fulcrum of even constitutional development in the country. There is an agreement that has to be ratified by the entire stakeholders in the country, which also speaks to the issues of armed groups and arms trafficking that I talk about. Because if there is no guarantee for peace, election do not resolve national question. The outcome of election that is not well conducted in a free and fair process, it will rather aggravate those national questions that are lingering on South Sudan. And they have to do
Dr.
with the issues
Ojewale,
of...
unfortunately, we have run out of time. I wish we could continue, but we have to leave it there for today. Thank you for joining us on Africa Update.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you. That's Dr. Oluwole Ojewale, ENACT Regional Organized Crime Observatory Coordinator for Central Africa at the Institute for Security Studies, joining us on the line. Our news headlines up next.